All right, peoples. This is probably my first video for today. I can't remember. I think I did another video sometime today. Maybe it was today. Maybe it was. I want to talk a little bit about very quickly. It's a short video on Sean Porter's father, Kenny Porter, talking about all people in current boxing. Porter wants to face, and Kenny Porter was talking about Akeem Thurman. Akeem Thurman. I mean, Errol Spencer's out of the game for the minute. Akeem Thurman, Andy Pacquiao, Terrence Crawford, running back with Danny Garcia. Don't matter. Sean Porter wants them. They're supposed to face in the first quarter of 2020. Porter's training already. And then Fight Hype interviewer said, Floyd's coming back in the game. They say, of course, we don't mind having Floyd at all. He right down the street from us. They're on the same strip. And the thing about it is, I listened to Adrian Broner when they was talking about, Bud Crawford calling out Floyd, and AB was like, he came back for easy money. I think about it and I say, okay, yeah, his status is such that he could get easy money, but are you really coming back in the game just for cash grabs? Because we've seen it with Conor McGregor. Now, obviously, it looks like he's trying to get a fight with Khabib. But we done see this already. I mean, by now, the MMA people should realize he's going to beat Khabib. All right, that's a dude he can beat. So, I mean, fool me once, fool me twice, but not fool me thrice. I mean, are they going to be that stupid? Are the people that gullible that they don't realize that Khabib is going to get beat by Floyd? Floyd's a boxer. He's been doing it all life. And Khabib hasn't been. So I'm not cool with that, really. But once again, easy money, right? So I'm not cool with the cash grabs. I'm telling you right now. If Floyd coming back into boxing, they talking about maybe he'll face Pacquiao. I don't know. But if he's coming back into boxing, about time you face somebody credible. That's just my opinion. Of course, he can do whatever he wants, but in my opinion, that's a fight I'm not gonna watch. Right? And it's nice because we have a new generation of fighters right now, and we're really way past Floyd right now. He was good for his time, but come on, man, you can't be doing this all the time. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's my time. That's all I got to say on Floyd. With that, I think he's getting too much press time and stuff. People talking about Floyd too much, in my opinion. There's better things to see and talk about these days. By the way, what's his name? Tangible Boxing wanted me to respond to his video. He actually put his video up because I didn't respond to you. Now, listen, I did see your video before, but I was busy doing so many other things that I really didn't feel like responding to it. And even now, I said I was going to respond, at least check out your video and stuff. I'll be honest with you, Intangible, like, you don't understand. I don't think you get it. I'm not really on Floyd like that, right? You probably think I am, but I'm not really, okay? But I use him as a reference point because he was that good. He was that good in this generation. And as like I said before, what I really appreciate was his boxing skills, his boxing IQ. All right, some of the stuff he's doing now, I think is whack as shit, to be honest with you. So that's just my thoughts on Floyd Mayweather. I don't worship the guy. You got to understand, I appreciate what he does in the ring. All right. Hey, I didn't even look at your Henry Armstrong, Muhammad Ali arguments. I haven't looked at your video. I haven't looked at it yet. That's to tell you how much I'm just not interested in that. I'm just like looking at so many other things in boxing right now. But I'll get to your video probably. I'll try to respond to you. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But in the meantime, I just wanted you to know that I did see your video. I saw it way before you even put the link. I saw it because it always comes up in my feed. I just didn't bother to check it out. I've been seeing 68 videos too. They come up in my feed. I just didn't bother to check them out because I was so busy looking at some other interesting things, which I really want to talk to you guys about in boxing, which I think were more pressing than that. But if I'm trying to get around to it. I'll try to get around to you guys and respond where I see there are valid points to respond to. But you guys know I think he's the best ever, and that's just what it is. And I made so many arguments on that. I think the beginning of your video was talking about how you don't value the skills of fighters, or you don't use that in all-time greatness, but you look at stats or whatever. I don't know what it is you're really saying, because you have to look at the skill of the fighter. That's what develops the style. Styles make fights. Styles are based on the skills the fighter has. So you have to look at skills, my friend. You have to. It's a factor. So if you're telling me that you're not looking at skills, then what are you looking at? You have to look at skills. That's what makes. I don't know how else to say. It's a fundamental thing in boxing. Okay, skills are very important. Whatever skills you have, and saying a guy's more skilled than another, what does that actually mean? You have to be able to clarify that, nail it down. That's just some of my fundamental points. You started off your argument saying you don't regard skills, as a major factor. You look at other accomplishments. You can't do that. All your accomplishments are based off of your skills. That's what builds your style. You have a certain style of fighting, right? So the only way you could have that style of fighting is because you acquired skills to develop that style of fighting. So it always comes down to skills. You have to talk about skills. Now, there can be a guy who has a lot of skills like Sean Porter, but they're not honed. See, I keep on saying this over and over again. Otherwise, what's the use watching boxing? We shouldn't watch boxing. We should just read about it, right? Different guys' accomplishments. We watch boxing because we're watching guys with skills, certain skills, deal with each other and the styles that they have and their ability and their strength and their mental determination and all these other factors, their heart and all of that shit, right? So you have to look at that. That's what makes styles. You can't have a style without skills. Now, the thing about it is, like I said before, you have to look at smarts as well, or the IQ or the intellect of the fighter. So take, for instance, Deontay Wilder. He has less, I would say he's a less skilled fighter, meaning that he has less hone skills, one, and two, he may have less skills, do less things than, say, a Luis Ortiz. That's what it looks like on the surface. We may be absolutely wrong. He may actually have a lot more skills than Luis Ortiz, but not as developed. What we do know is Luis Ortiz has more honed skills because he's been in boxing so long than Deontay Wilder. However, because he used his smarts, he was able to set up Luis Ortiz. Even though it looked like he was losing the fight, he was able to set up Luis Ortiz to land the straight right, straight down the center, and knock him out. So, while it appears that Luis Ortiz, I say appears because when we break down Deontay Wilder and what he does and the science of what he does, you might find out that Deontay Wilder actually has more skills than Luis Ortiz, but not more honed skills. These are two different things I'm talking about here. So I hope you're processing what I'm saying. So that he might end up, smash the like button if you guys want to smash the like button. So what might happen is what happens is Deontay Wilder, using his IQ, his ring intelligence, understanding what is going on in the ring, he uses his IQ to set up Luis Ortiz to operate on the skills he has. You must have some ring sabs. Another guy that people underestimate in terms of skill is Rocky Marciano, for example. Rocky Marciano would set up his opponents to knock them out. And Rocky Marciano had a lot of IQ. And if you listen to Rocky Marciano break down fights and break down what's going on in a ring, you'll realize that Rocky Marciano was a very intelligent boxer. All right? He might look like he's scrapping, but he's actually setting you up. And I was able to break down a couple of fights which he had against certain opponents where he actually set them up to knock them out. Okay? So you must have skills. We must evaluate those skills. And what I would tell you is, a lot of times you have to look at what tells you how good those skills are is the level of opposition you face and how you overcame them. That tells you how good your skills are. But you must have skills. Boxing is built on skills. You don't just go through boxing with just mere talent. You have to learn something. It's things you learn, and those are skills. You also have craft. Craft is not the same thing as skills, okay? And you may acquire and learn the craft of boxing, and then you have other things like techniques. Techniques are not necessarily skills. They're not necessarily craft, but they are composites of skill and craft. So, there's a lot to boxing than just meets the eye, but you have to look at skills. And this is why when Canelo was arguing with the ESPN Deportes journalist, the journalist was saying that, Lomachenko and Terence Crawford are more skilled than you. And Canelo was saying, but I faced tougher opposition. What do you mean by they're more skilled than me? Because, again, Canelo employs skills, and he employs craft, and he does it at a very high level because he's, worked those skills and craft and honed them so very well and faced opposition to help him better himself, that he would think in his mind that he's more skilled than those guys. Okay? And not skilled in terms of variety of skills necessarily, but in terms of honed skills, because it usually comes down to honed skills, which are more important than just skill. You may know how to do various things, but you may not be able to do all of those various things very well. Canelo does things very well. Now, the journalist was saying to Canelo that he doesn't do things very well. He does them good, and that is not true. Canelo actually does things much better than how Terence Crawford would do something, because Canelo's much sharper. He has much. You can see that he has done it over, repeated it, and done it so many different times to perfect it. So that's what I have to say about that. I see someone speaking here. Let me see who this person is. Mr. Pigeon, Mike Tyson says, as a boxer, Floyd is high level. But as a fighter, he is high, not the best. Correct. I agree. Fighter versus boxer. Floyd's skills were superior. That is true. Yes. Mr. Pigeon says, Wilder's resume is a hall of shame, in all honesty. I mean, we need to see him in a real fight with a top dude. I mean, Luis Ortiz is a very good fighter. He's a very, very good fighter. Very good boxer, should I say. Just that Wilder set him up and took him out. Okay? And Wilder is a guy who he just needs one shot at you, and he tries to make it count. So Luis Ortiz made one mistake, and he fell for the trap. But Wilder was seeing the trap all the time. He was setting the trap for a while, and he sprung it, and Ortiz was not able to withstand it. And he got knocked out. So that's what happened with that. But he's a good fighter. He's a very good fighter. Wilder made him look good, and then all of a sudden made him look as if he couldn't take a punch. But that's not what happened. It's just he didn't see that punch coming. He didn't see it at all. It stunned him. He thought he was winning the fight. He thought he had it in the bag. He got overconfident. He did not maintain range. He did not maintain distance, and he got popped at Wilder's ideal range. So that's what happened with him. But Luis Ortiz is a good fighter. Much better fighter, I think, than Dillian Whyte. And if you guys dispute that, maybe we could have Dillian Whyte face Luis Ortiz and see how that fight turns out. But we've seen Luis Ortiz get popped with right hands against Christian Hammer. Popped him with right hands. So it wasn't really surprising that Wilder caught him with some right hands. But back to what I was saying concerning intangible. So I think I will address your stuff soon enough. I understand the accomplishments, but you have to look at what happened in the ring. I've said this many times. You have to look at the fights, the actual fights, and what happened in the ring in the actual fights. Because sometimes, sometimes there's many things to talk about when I want to talk about these things, but you have to look at it, and you have to look at the vulnerabilities of the fighter, where they're vulnerable. Kovalev was vulnerable to the body. All right, maybe he has a Hall of Fame resume, but he's vulnerable to the body, and that was a known fact. And he's not as strong as, say, a Bidibiev or even a Canelo or a Danny Jacobs or a Triple G. He's not strong like that. He has stamina problems. We have to acknowledge these things. And just like how we acknowledge those problems with Kovalev, and just like how we acknowledge those problems, we acknowledge that Canelo has difficulty chasing down guys and cutting off the ring and executing, even though he's getting better at it. Similarly, we have to look at the vulnerabilities of guys from the past. We can't say that they're invulnerable. So we have to look at their skill sets, and we have to look at the holes in their game. We have to, right? And I can tell you, Sugar Ray Robinson had difficulty with guys who could really box. That's why he lost to Randy Turpin. That's why he lost to Ralph Tiger Jones, right? He'd never seen the high guard like that so much before, and so Gene Fullmer gave him problems. Carmen Basilio, a smaller guy, ended up getting a split decision win over him because he was quicker than him at the high weight class, at middleweight. He was tough. He could take Sugar Ray Robinson's punch. So all of these things you have to, look into and look at the styles that the guys had. There were guys like Holly Mims. There were guys like several guys, anyway. All right, several guys who faced Sugar Ray Robinson got draws with him, and some of them he never rematched, and some of them he knocked out the second time around. And so all of these things you have to look at and honestly get a good perspective on things. And then you look at the opposition that Sugar Ray Robinson faced. You have to evaluate his opposition, and the only way you're going to evaluate them properly is to look at them in the ring. Look at what skills they bring to the table, what their style was, And that's how we match up guys. We have to look at style versus style. When we talked about Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford, for example, in the present day, Get the Smoke was saying Terrence engages too much, and that could be his downfall against a guy like Errol Spence. Because we're looking at his style, we're looking at his skills, and we're looking at the flaws in his game. He got caught by Yuriorkis Gamboa several times and stunned several times by a smaller guy. So versus Pacquiao, we're looking at Pacquiao, who has something similar to Gamboa, but is even more tricky and crafty now. And we're saying that will give Terrence Crawford problems. Will he make the adjustments? Probably. Just like how we assess that now, we have to look at fighters from different eras and assess them similarly. You have to look at what they do in the ring, what they have done in the ring, not just their accomplishments in terms of who they face and who they beat. But sometimes they beat guys, but they struggle with guys in a life and death situation. Take, for instance, Sugar Ray Leonard versus Thomas the Hitman Hearns. When we look at Sugar Ray Leonard, he was losing to Thomas Hearns on the outside, trying to outbox him. And it's only when he put up his high guard, walked to Thomas Hearns, learning to use this high guard by intuition, and finding a way to block punches that Hearns had, close the distance, and start hitting him to the body, and then coming over the top to the head, that he won against Thomas the Hitman Hearns. The point being, if we're looking at a Mayweather matchup with Hearns, we're looking at a Whitaker matchup with Hearns, we're looking at anybody matchup with Hearns, they must be able to bring that to the table, have a high guard to walk towards Hearns, got to get to the inside of him, because in his body at the lower weight levels, he was susceptible to the body, and you could take him out to the body and then come to the top to the head. Marvin Hagler did the same thing. My point is this: when we're looking at fighters through time and we're comparing them and we're talking about who's better than who, remember, who's better than who means almost like pound for pound status. If we were to meet each other in the ring, who would win? That's what you're basically saying. Who's better than who? So that skills do play a huge role in who's better than who, not just in terms of skills in their fight, but style matchups. And on top of that, which styles would give you problems? We know that Floyd Mayweather would have problems with a guy who he can't hit as easily as he would like, just like how that guy would have difficulty hitting him. That's a style. And you have to do with ring smarts and all that also. So this is the kind of thing you have to think about when you're talking about who's the best ever. All right? Not just resume. Now, Canelo's resume proves something. Just as how all these guys through time, their resume would prove something. Just like how Mayweather's resume would prove something. It shows he overcomes certain styles. Certain styles don't give him difficulty. Certain styles give him difficulty. Certain certain approaches. If you see a guy rematch a guy a second time and he fought him a different way to how the first time he fought the guy, it shows you that he is able to make adjustments, adapt. The versatility of the fighter. The thing that made Mayweather different, as is Canelo, as is Terrence Crawford, right, is these guys are able to make adjustments to the style presented to them. Floyd's probably the quickest at making adjustments in the history of boxing, whereas Terrence Crawford, he makes adjustments too. It takes him a little while because he might see something he'd never seen before, but he makes that adjustment. And similarly, when you look at Kid Gavilan versus the Southpaw, first time he's seeing a Southpaw, and Davey Day or one of those guys, I can't remember what the guy's name was. When he first saw that Southpaw, again, I watched the fight. He was using a lot of feints and stuff, but he was trying to get foot position on Davey Day. He was very cautious about how he approached Davey Day because Davey Day would come lunging in with the left. Very awkward kind of fighter. And so he was trying to make the adjustments to figure out how to crash Davey Day. I think he finally stopped him somewhere in the 9th or 10th round. I can't remember the fight, but the point is, when you watch the fights, what you see, and you get the benefit of seeing the actual style of the fighter, watching them, seeing the array of skills they put to the table or they bring to the table, what they can do. If you know a fighter can bob and weave, they can fundamentally bob and weave, that is to say. All right, they may not have the high guard style, but they feint very well. They throw the jab very well. They can distance control very well. They can deal with a guy who's coming from low to high. They know what to do. They change levels pretty well. These fundamental things, which you see in King Gavilan. Sugar Ray Robinson was a little bit stronger than him, but again, he had difficulty with Kid Gavilan. Okay, so these are the kinds of things that I try to talk with people. So you must go and watch the fights. You can't just talk about the legend of a guy and talk about how people report on him. You need to go see him for yourself to make a proper assessment of him. Now, if you don't have video footage on guys, then even if you have minimal video footage on the guys, you can be able to kind of understand and understand their style. For example, there's limited footage on Charlie Burley, but just looking at Charlie Burley's movement and his style and stuff, it showed us that he was somewhat of a defensive fighter, and he was a thinking defensive fighter. That is to say, his muscle memory and all of that, he was able to make smart decisions in the ring. So Ezra Charles, we got a lot of footage on him. We don't have a lot of. We have a lot of footage on Sugar Ray Robinson. We don't. We have a little. We have some footage on the Ghetto Wizard and Lou Feldman and Lou Jenkins and so on and so on and so on, and Harry Armstrong and so on. Right? We have some significant amount of footage on these guys. So we get to see their style. Henry Armstrong was a very close fighter. Put his head in your chest and worked the body, and he was really good at slipping punches and rolling punches and bobbing and weaving from punches and using the jab to get to the inside. You know, very active fighter, some excessive movement with his head and his body, but nonetheless, a very active fighter. And he did a lot of things in there, a lot of nuanced things, and a lot of techniques and skills which we use today as fundamentals. Okay. And they teach this fundamentals. Sugar Ray Robinson, we teach a lot of fundamentals off of him. Joe Louis, we teach a lot of fundamentals off of Joe Louis. Again, coming from Detroit, okay, Midwest fighter. My point anyway is that when you look at these people, again, Sugar Ray Robinson was also from the Midwest. I think he was up Michigan side. But my point anyway is this. These guys get the fundamentals. When you look at basketball, like I said before, you look at Walt Chamberlain and Bill Russell and all these guys, they built the foundation for the later fighters. The fighters like, later basketball players like, what's the kid's name today? The 6 foot tall, the 6'10" guy. You guys, LeBron James and the Warriors kid and so on. They built the foundation for these guys. Now these guys taking it to the next level. Of course, basketball has changed so much from what it used to be. But they've taken it to the next level. Now, you can argue all kinds of things out the wazoo if you want to. And that's cool by me. But my point is, at the end of the day, we never seen a 6'10" basketball player play like that. Okay? The way how, with the power, the speed, the grace, the height, the jumping, everything. And the passing ability and stuff. Not quite like a guy like LeBron James. You haven't seen that ever before. Okay? And the kid being a tall kid for a long time. And my point being this. That when you look in times, there's always somebody that comes up in a generation who just kind of separates themselves from the entire generation, right? And this is where we talk about these people. So, like for instance, Sugar Ray Robinson separated himself from the entire generation that he was in. Then we had Muhammad Ali, who separated himself from everything. He was like the center of the universe. Then we had Sugar Ray Leonard. Then we had a bunch of people. We had Mike Tyson. Then we had, Bernard Hopkins and Roy Jones Jr. Then we had Oscar De La Hoya. Then we had Shane Mosley. Then we had Floyd Mayweather, right? So these people kind of separate. Julio Cesar Chavez, right? These guys were like, the guys. They separated themselves from everybody else. And the point behind this is that Pernell Whitaker. How can I forget him? So these people separated themselves, and these are the people now we're comparing with each other to see, and they all have different styles. Roberto Duran, well, he came up in Sugar Ray Leonard's era. Sugar Ray Leonard was the peak of everything. He was the icon, right? Because he beat everybody, right? But the point is that at the end of the day, you have to look at these different icons now and to assess them all through time. Best way is with footage. Now, you got no footage on them, then you can't really truly assess them. You're going off of data and hearsay and stuff, and you really can't truly give a proper assessment of them, right? That's the truth. Thankfully, we have footage on Harry Wills. We have footage on some footage on some fights with that kid who went from lightweight to heavyweight. The man who went from lightweight to Sam Langford. Barbados Joe Walker. We have a little bit of footage on Joe Gans. Now these guys that we're talking about, Barbados Joe Walker and Joe Gans and Sam Langford, Harry Wills, and these guys were early in the game. Okay, it was way back before the beginning of the turn of the 20th century. These guys were way back then. So we're looking at way back in time. You have to understand that. Okay, so when we're talking about the history of boxing and stuff, and we're comparing different eras, you have to understand a couple things. One is that you're looking at boxing developing. It's forming into something. All right? These are the early phases of boxing. Now, that doesn't mean that these guys didn't have slickness and skill and all of that. That's not what we're saying. Some of them were just phenomenal. But what we're saying is still, boxing is still growing, forming, and evolving. And this is very important for you to understand, because one of the very important things to understand, and this is why it's so important that we assess these guys correctly, is that sometimes these guys, they just got the raw end of the stick, period. You know, fights were called as draws where one guy actually won and he beat down the other guy. Sometimes fights were called as wins where the guy who won really lost. So these are all facts. And then we also have the factor that we had segregation, where some people just didn't get the fights that they wanted to get, but they fought the same guys over and over, the top guys. So there's all of these kinds of factors we have to factor into the equation. What I'm really trying to say is you have to see the fucking fights to really make a true assessment on things. And some of these guys, we don't have footage on them at all. So they're legend. I call them legend. You know, guys like Harry Crabb, we have no footage on them in terms of fights. We just have to go off of what they say. And that, for me, is never good enough. I want to see if he actually won the fights that he won. And if there's no footage on him, then it's just legend, in my opinion, until I see with my two eyes. And the only way, the best way to evaluate any fucking fight, I don't care what nobody say, you have to watch the fucking boxing. You have to watch boxing. Sorry about the F-bombs. You have to watch boxing. So if you're not watching boxing, how the hell you gonna know if this guy won or this guy didn't win? Right? And you know, through history, you know, there have been newspapers reporting that this guy lost. Other newspapers say he won. Right? And the ref called it. Sometimes the ref is the guy that judged the fight, and he called it. And the newspapers the next day would report who win or who lose. Only the people there would actually know who won and who lost. So you have to factor all these things in. Right? Human error, or human perception of things, human knowledge of things. So it's all of that you have to put into the equation. All right, but boxing has evolved. I'm telling you, it has evolved. It's changed quite a lot. It's still changing to this day. There's a lot of things that are changing in boxing. But having said all of that, my point is, the best, you have to factor in skills. You have to factor in skills. It's a very important part of boxing. Skills is a fundamental. That's how you know how to box. You learn from acquired skills. The first skill you learn to do is throw a jab, right? And your stance and all of that stuff. So you have to factor in skills. You can't ignore that. It's just something you have to do. That's why we watch boxing. We're watching guys with skills employ their skills. It's a fundamental truth. It's a fundamental thing you have to have. All right, so you can't ignore that. And with Canelo, you can't ignore his skills. And you can't ignore Terence Crawford's skills. You can't ignore Lomachenko's skills. We know what limitations Lomachenko has. He's a mid-range fighter. All right? So all his skills are going to be along those lines. We know the style of his fighting and what range he fights at, because we know his skill set. We know what he likes to do. He likes to go weak side. He's more about footwork than he's about upper body movement and head movement, even though he does a little bit of that. And he comes in off of angles, right? That's his skills, right? Okay, and it gets in more detail as we look at it in more detail. William Baker says Ortiz grew up watching Jack Johnson fights. Great stuff, great stuff. Boogie Strong says, hey man, what happened to John Wonder and Tommy Temper? Who's John Wonder? John Wonder is in my other channel. John Wonder's from my other channel. Tommy Temper, he's cool. He's around doing his thing. Actually, his channel just put out something recently. He's cool. And Get to Smoke is cool too. They're all my compatriots, including Intangible Boxing. So I'm just saying, you can't ignore skills. So that's a long video there on that one point. I just elaborated. You can't ignore skills. You just can't. You know, and when you say more skill fighter, what do you mean? I always say, because you have honed skills and you have people who may be versatile. That is, they have a range of skills, but they're not all developed. And we see it with Sean Porter, for example. He's now developing and honing his skills. So what exactly do you mean? And again, you have to be smart enough to know how to employ your skills. Because what skills do, if you have a great amount of skills and they're honed, It gives you a lot of options. It's what you can do in a fight. The skill of fighting off the ropes, fighting in the center of the ring, fighting going forwards or going backwards. Gives you options. Right? Yeah. So let me end this video right here. But I will try to address your video. I'm kind of, to be honest with you, I'm kind of tired of talking about Floyd, seeing he's in the news and everything, and him coming back into boxing. I don't know if that's a good thing per se, because I feel like the younger generation now, they're getting their little shine on, and I think, you know, it's better he just stay out of boxing, in my opinion, right now. I'm getting tired of hearing his name thrown around in the mix with these young dudes, and he's not gonna face those guys. So unless he's really interested in facing these young guys, he's taking the shine away from them. And I just don't like that. I don't like that. You're an old dude. You want to do exhibition fights, no problem. But quite frankly, brother, you know, if you say you're coming back in 2020, but you're going to fight an MMA fighter, then please just spare me the bullshit. You know, just spare me the bullshit. Go fight your MMA fighter. But we're not interested in that shit. You know, we're interested in the young guns now. We're interested in Deontay Wilder. Your era is over. Why are you even sticking around in boxing? I don't know. Everybody, you got your just due and your respect, and I'm getting tired of hearing his name, to be honest with you. So, as much as I talk about him being the best ever and all of that, and there's evidence and facts to support that, don't get it twisted. I don't kiss his ass like that, okay? I'm just being real with you. All right? Maybe you have a different opinion about me on that, but nah, not really. I use him when I want to talk about certain things, boxing wise, but don't get it twisted. I'm not like enamored with him like that. All right, so I'm gonna catch you guys later. Hold on a second. Let me see somebody saying something. That's basically it. Shout out to Mr. Pigeon, Mr. William Baker, Poobie Sistrunk. This was a long video, longer than I planned to have it, but that's the way how it goes when you don't plan videos. You just kind of talk. So if you like this video, I see some of you guys agree with some things that I say, some of the things you don't agree with, and that's cool. If you like this video, don't forget that you can share this video, subscribe to the channel, as well as you can donate via Western Union or MoneyGram. Don't feel shy or bashful to do so. Always looking forward to that. And I'm going to catch y'all guys in the next one. Peace.